Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto was taken by Yoda and trained to become a Jedi Knight. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Actually it's more likely that there still is, a war going on. Konoha village was destroyed, not to mention countless others. The whole land of fire was turned into a war zone that was split between the warring factions. That's why the Shinobi Alliance was created between Kumo and the survivors of Konoha, to fight against a common enemy. After Orochimaru betrayed his alliance and decimated Suna, the six Kazekage begged and pleaded for the alliance to rescue them from total annihilation. The alliance council heard her out and agreed to take them in. What's left of Suna was only a few thousand people. They didn't have a Sannin or a real cage to defend them. Sasuke stated as the group began to head out into the forest. Suna's on their six Kazekage already. What happened to the fourth and fifth? Both were killed by Orochimaru. Rasa was assassinated, and Baki was really only a cage out of a necessity for a leader. He wasn't anywhere near the snake's level. Sasuke said grimly. Two cages killed by Orochimaru. Where do Kiri and Iwa fit in all this? Naruto asked. When I left, Kiri had started to fall under the banner of Akatsuki. As for Iwa, they claimed complete neutrality. It wasn't surprising. Inoki, the third Tsuchikage, is a stubborn fence-sitting ox, and stuff like that happens when your ally Kumo and your enemy Konoha form an alliance. The smaller villages like Kusa Dane either joined the alliance or the Akatsuki. So who exactly is this Orochimaru, and what's this Akatsuki you keep talking about? Naruto kept laying on the questions as they trekked through the forest, continuing north. Orochimaru was one of the three pupils of the third Hokage, Udumbis. He's one of the legendary three Sannin. Naruto was confused at the term Sannin, but didn't press the issue. He was curious about other things. And the Akatsuki. What's their deal? Naruto was curious. Red Dawn was about as cliché a name for a secret organization or cult that you could get. I don't know much about Akatsuki, they only really came to power about a year before I left. All I know is that they're leaders, the 9 at the top, they're powerful. Crazy powerful. Each one of them is said to be able to challenge a cage, and some are even stronger than that. But the most important thing is that, for some reason, they don't like Orochimaru, and he doesn't like them. So they're each other fighting too. Great, then it's a war on two fronts for everyone. Naruto sighed. He was beginning to regret coming to aid Konoha, even if it was in exchange for some chakra training. There was no way it would be worth this much effort. The conflict between the two of them is probably the only thing keeping the alliance alive right now. I remember we were fighting tooth and nail just to hold back Orochimaru from complete dominance for the first few years, and then Akatsuki came into the spotlight, and everything suddenly ground to a halt. The land of fire is pretty much split in two between Orochimaru in the east and Akatsuki in the southwest, although the alliance managed to liberate some of the northern territories just before I left. The Uchiha hideout was supposed to be the rendezvous point for their new base of operations, but it looks like they didn't make it that far, considering we haven't run into them. So then where exactly is their current base of operations? Liz interrupted Naruto's parade of questions. I knew of one before I took my leave. So we're heading there now. Should be about a half-day hike. Sasuke replied as everyone looked at him, causing him to look at them. Wait, what? King questioned as Sasuke stared back, confused. He didn't consider that they moved it in the, 10 years that you've been gone off in space. Stoa questioned as Sasuke stopped and thought about it before he started to walk again. When I left, the alliance was in pretty good shape. Orochimaru hadn't launched an offensive against them in over a year because it was too fortified on his front. Sasuke muttered as Naruto sighed. It doesn't matter. We're bound to find some clues there at least. Maybe we can find out where they've gone, Naruto stated as he followed after him. The group walked for what seemed like hours, but it wasn't a big deal for them. Naruto was a highly trained Jedi general, and the clones were bred for this. They could go on for days without needing a prolonged rest. Sir, I've got movement. King spoke up as everyone stopped and readied their weapons. King looked through his thermal visors and spotted multiple signatures ahead of them. Form up. Maybe Sasuke wasn't off after all. Naruto ordered as the clones closed their ranks. King and Blitz were on point, while Stoic and Storm brought up the rear. Naruto and Sasuke were also on alert, with Naruto ready to activate his saber and Sasuke's vibroblade already drawn. I've got them in my sights. Storm stated, more signatures, but they were further away. Here as well. Flash also stated. Naruto narrowed his eyes. They were surrounded it seems as they waited in the small forest clearing for what seemed like a couple of minutes. Orders, sir. Fox questioned as their fingers rested on the triggers of their blaster. Just give the word and we'll blast this whole forest down. Storm offered with a chuckle as Fang shook his head. Not all our problems can be solved by, never mind. The point is we don't know if these are hostiles. Fang stated as he kept his focuses. Whatever their intent, it isn't to have a picnic. Flash reprimanded them. Show yourself. Naruto called out in his native tongue. The clones trained their sights on their targets. There were 8 of them, but only one ended up moving at Naruto's urging. Out of the forest landed a single man wearing the same old Konoha flak jacket that Naruto remembered from his time being chased by Chunin as a kid. The typical blue shinobi shirt was replaced by a loose-fitting variant with short sleeves, the one that was typically used when venturing into tropical or desert climates. The man looked to be around his late 30s, his unkempt hair was charcoal black and almost reached his shoulders. Most importantly, he wore his headband tied around his upper arm just below the sleeve, but Naruto didn't recognize the engraving. It was a logogram that he couldn't make out from this distance, but it definitely wasn't the least symbol. Your turn. Identify yourself. The man questioned as Naruto narrowed his eyes as a couple of more people wormed their way out of the cover of the forest, surrounding them. Sasuke narrowed his eyes as he slowly moved to draw his sword. I could as you the same. What's your affiliation? Naruto responded as he readied his lightsaber. He would not be taking any risks. If Konoha was destroyed, then it was likely that their equipment stores were raided, and that flak jacket might just be a ruse. This could be an enemy. The man narrowed his eyes as he started to pull out one of his 2 swords. Naruto stared at it intensely. The edges were black, but the discoloration wasn't uniform throughout the blade. It almost looked as if the blade had somehow been charred from being tempered over and over again. Kenichi Nakamura. Konoha's Jonin Lieutenant Commander of the Shinobi Alliance. You should be able to tell by my air armband. The man righted his finger to pointing at the metal plate tied to his arm, once he remembered he wasn't wearing it on his head. Well, this was pretty convenient for them. You, however, wear no headband. You should know better in this day and age. Surrender yourselves for interrogation or prepare to die. Kenichi commanded. He himself was not aware of who they were. For all he knew, they could be agents working for Orochimaru. I'm afraid that we won't be surrendering to anyone. I'm actually hoping to meet with your leaders. Hokage Gramps, preferably. Naruto asked, but the shinobi scowled in response. That was when Naruto noticed Sasuke had grown tense and spoke through his now filtered voice. Hey, cool it. This isn't someone hoping to assassinate the cage. You really shouldn't reveal your plans so blatantly. Fine, if you won't come quietly, then we'll just have to drag your corpses into a cell. Kenichi interrupted, lifting his blade and vanishing from Naruto's sight. Naruto reached out with the force to prepare his defense, but was pushed aside as Sasuke blocked Kenichi's sword, his Sharingan activated. Listen here, GD, this seriously isn't an opponent you want to mess with. Sasuke strained against Kenichi's blade that seemed like it had been scorched by exposure to constant heat. It was as pitch black as his hair. Sasuke activated his lightning jutsu without hesitation, and Kenichi jumped back to avoid the electrifying aura surrounding his opponent. Aim for stun. We need them to tell us where the cage are hiding. Naruto shouted as the clones quickly switched their rifles to stun, and started to fire at their targets, who were all moving at the speed of a GD. Storm. Watch out. Fang called out as Storm was knocked several feet away before crashing to the ground after a light jab from his assailant. A light jab that felt like getting stabbed with a 20-centimeter vibro knife and getting punched by a Gamorrean thug. Getting up as he clutched his chest, Storm narrowed his eyes as he looked at his enemy. The man was around his height with brown hair and some seriously freaky pale eyes. Surrender, your fate was already sealed when I became your opponent. The man questioned, switching into what Storm thought was a hand-to-hand combat stance. Storm noticed the intense glare the man was giving him with his unsettling eyes and grinned at that. Perfect, he loved close combat. If this is how it's gonna be all over the planet, I'm gonna have the time of my life here. Storm dropped his blaster and took up his own stance as he readied his defense. The pale-eyed man charged forward at great speed, but his was nothing Storm couldn't counter. In his mind's eye, he pictured the man's hands as vibroblades and dodged his way around them. Storm moved in closer, diverting his opponent's palm strikes with a simple push against his forearm. With a mighty roar, Storm slammed his fist into the shinobi's sternum, sending him flying back into a tree. I take it you don't know who you're up against, Niji Hyuga, Jonin of the Hidden Leaf, and the fated 6 Hokage. His opponent said as he rose and dusted himself off. He briefly massaged the impact point on his chest, and with that Storm smirked triumphantly. I have no idea what you're saying, man. It sounds half Mandalorian, half gibberish to me. I could probably understand the Mandalorian bits if I tried, but I wasn't instructed on how to interpret gibberish. Storm mocked his pale-eyed opponent, confident now that he knew his blows were being felt. Now that the battle had begun, range advantage was quickly lost by the clones as their targets approached, and the situation quickly began to devolve into close combat. Blitz watched his opponent. His wild hair was growing in every direction, and there was red makeup running from his eyes to his chin. The giant creature next to him seemed to be a loyal beast that fought for him in combat. Blitz was surprised when the beast transformed into a perfect replica of its master with just a single cloud of smoke, and began rushing forward. The two bore their claws and began spinning violently, but the ever-confident captain kept his cool and waited for his opening. It didn't come, so he would have to make one. Reaching into his pouch, he tossed a concussion grenade into the air. It detonated just as the two figures moved in for the attack, sending them flying in separate directions. Blitz didn't have time to rest, as the man took to using a tree as a launching point for another spinning attack. He just barely moved out of the way in time, but his armor had gotten a few scratches on it, and his helmet had been removed. His opponent grinned and presumed superiority. "You'd better just surrender now. Cause I, Kiba Inizuka, the future 6th Hokage, won't go down easily," this Inizuka man proclaimed proudly. Blitz's sweat dropped, not understanding a lick of what he had just said before he raised his blaster and fired, stunning the young man. "You only hit me once, you know." Not exactly something to get excited about. Blitz hadn't understood the man's words, but he knew arrogance when he saw it. He dodged an attack from the man-beast behind him. Rolling to the side, he looked up to see the man charging at him again. Waiting till the last moment, he pulled up his blaster and fired again, stunning the dog as well. "Well, at least it went a lot smoother than I thought," Blitz mumbled. He was surprised when his arm was suddenly grasped by the man and flung his high speed into the trees. "I'm sorry, were you saying something? It's gonna take more than a little zap to knock me down for good. I'm a Jonin for a reason," Kiba boasted while Blitz rolled to his feet confused. He checked his settings and it was definitely set high enough to incapacitate any regular human. Then, Blitz remembered that this man was not a regular human, he was some sort of beast hybrid, which meant stun weaponry would most likely be pointless against him. While Storm and Blitz had been dragged away from the main conflict, the remaining clones had managed to stick together, and were facing the rest of the shinobi scouting party. Fang found himself facing brown-haired girl that was definitely the youngest in the group. Her pale eyes much the same as the man Storm had run off to do battle with, so he figured they must be related. Their moves were rougher and less refined than the male, but her power was something else. She was also lightning fast to the point that Fang, second only to Flash in terms of speed, was being outpaced by her. She rushed in for another series of blows. With no other option, Fang dropped his blaster and unsheathed the long vibrocnives under his gauntlets. Enabling his stealth camo, he dodged her incoming attack pretty easily, but found himself reeling when his counterattack was blocked with a palm strike to the inside of his elbow. Feeling tremendous pain recoiling through his body, Fang chose to retreat to a safer distance. A cheap trick like invisibility isn't going to help you against a Byakugan as powerful as mine. Maybe my sister would be fooled by it, but not me. Fang heard her speak in the same language that none of them understood, but was off-put by the fact that she was staring him right in the eyes. King had unwillingly drawn the short straw and was facing off against two dark-skinned youths. A nervous white-haired one and a fiery red-haired one, both armed with curved longswords, an interesting design choice to only have the edge be on one side of the blade. But whatever the reason for the choice, it didn't help them against him any. The clone all-star was dancing his way around the two ninja with his superior blade work. "Boy, what the hell is wrong with you, Amoy? Get it together. It's just one guy," the Redeed shouted. "Man, that armor sure is scary. I wonder if there's some kind of super soldiers created in a pot by Orochimaru to destroy what's left of Konoha. That guy can seriously hold a grudge." The blonde-haired Amoy went off into his own world as usual. "You're right, and they're being led by that traitor Chiha. Bring your mind down from out of the clouds and focus. This guy is going to run circles around us if we don't work together," the Redeed said as she closed in for another strike. King deflected her sword masterfully with his wrist plate, and zoomed in for what would be a certain kill, but felt his blade clang against the man's katana. His strength was greater than the girl's, and King had to focus both his blades on blocking him. "Man, I don't know what scares me more, him or you, Carrie." The Redeed took the opportunity to roll out of danger and go in for a second strike. King had no choice but to retreat, cutting branches down as he spun out of harm's way and into the path of his pursuers. Carrie spit out a few leaves and twigs from her mouth before she raged at her partner again. "He's not half as scary as my husband when he gets pissed, so if you don't want to get squashed like you're some kind of damn bug, you'd better get it in gear. Samui-sensei is watching, don't disappoint her." Amoy wiped a bead of sweat from his brow as he recovered from the struggle against King's next power strike. Stoic and Flash considered themselves lucky in that they were facing a gorgeous buxom blonde. They weren't so lucky in that she seemed to be the strongest one out of all their opponents. The two were being pressured by her skills with the Tanto. Stoic had unsheathed the knife he rarely used, and was managing to defend himself with it, while Flash opted to use his agility to avoid her attacks. This was all well and good for keeping themselves alive, but it did little to pressure their opponent. Naruto instincts urged him to rush to the aid of his men struggling against the woman, but then he noticed that out of everyone the one who was the worst off was Sasuke. He was being pushed back constantly by Kenichi's relentless offense. Clearly the superior swordsman, Kenichi parried Sasuke's attacks with ease, and then struck back with precision and grace. Naruto was amazed at the shinobi's blade work, and for a moment it left him awestruck. Realizing that Sasuke was in the most immediate danger, Naruto made his choice. His blue blade came to life with a snap and he sprinted forward towards Sasuke's opponent. Kenichi was more than ready for him, however, and he quickly pushed Sasuke back once more before raising his blade to defend. Naruto chose a terror as his initial method of attack, and with a flying lunge, struck at the onyx-haired Jonin. Then, something happened that surprised Naruto. Rather than block his attack, Kenichi had opted to flip over it, briefly stepping on the blonde's back, and enhancing his momentum with a brief but powerful kick. Wait, what? Was Naruto's only thought as he went crashing into a small tree and then into the ground. The former GD rose to his feet as he wiped away the scrapes from colliding with the trunk, and looked back at Kenichi, who was against contesting Sasuke in a blade lock. One rhetorical question was on the blonde's mind. Did he just outmaneuver my terror? Naruto was at a loss for words. Very few had ever managed to outpace his cadences with a terror, and none had since he became a master. Then Naruto remembered Sasuke's warning before the fight began. Maybe this really wasn't someone he could fool around with, especially if he was trouncing Sasuke who had been his equal during their little scuffle on Geonosis. Naruto ran to join Sasuke, but rather than go for a one-dimensional attack like before, he merely moved to cover the bounty hunter's flank. Kenichi's blade impacted on Naruto's saber, and Naruto was somewhat surprised that it didn't melt immediately. The only weapons that could stand up to lightsabers in the galaxy, aside from other lightsabers, were vibroblades and Mandalorian iron. Naruto didn't have to think hard to guess that it must be the latter. Considering the similarities, it made sense. Stronger shinobi leading and training newer shinobi on missions drew a clear parallel to the Mandalorian crusaders of old, and their languages were definitely under the same family, considering how many words were the same. Naruto pressed his attack, but found little success in gaining ground. Kenichi's blade was slowly starting to push him back. That's when Sasuke struck at Kenichi with his own blade. Breaking the blade lock, Kenichi spun wildly, rushing his heel into Naruto's side with a powerful roundhouse kick. Naruto moved quickly to defuse the blow and recovered quicker than Kenichi had hoped. That made his move to block Sasuke dangerous. Kenichi changed his strategy and kept the momentum from his roundhouse going into Sasuke once more, but he had lost too much impacting Naruto, and the bounty hunter struck back with a fierce kick to Kenichi's side. Sliding across the ground, Kenichi pulled back for a moment to regroup and reassess. So, you both use blades, huh? Guess that makes things easier for me. Kenichi smirked as he drew his second blade. Personally, I like using just one a lot more, but I'm a lot better with two. Plus it looks a bit cooler, don't you think? Kenichi flourished both of his blades before dashing at Naruto and Sasuke once more. Naruto and Sasuke briefly glanced at one another before nodding. Sasuke sheathed his sword and drew his blaster, while Naruto took the brunt of Kenichi's attack. Kenichi struck again and again with his twin blades, and Naruto felt the strain in his muscles. Not wanting to give any more ground, Naruto dug in hard while Sasuke set his blaster to kill. Taking position behind the blonde, Sasuke began firing at their opponent who dodged the incoming bolts. Finally, he got a good shot in, but it was found to be no match for the blackened blades that batted it away and into a nearby tree. Well, that tactic had gone down the drain a lot quicker than they had hoped. Blades, blasters, none of it seemed to matter. Kenichi had been a step ahead of them every time. Naruto was starting to get sick of it, and Sasuke had been at that stage 5 minutes ago. Alright, I'm stumped. You got any info on this guy? Naruto asked. Their lack of progress was definitely a hefty buzzkill looming overhead. Naruto didn't want to commit to using his full effort until they had some sort of attack plan. Applying his limited knowledge of Makashi and Gemso seemed to be sufficient for casual defense, so it was best to save more taxing efforts like a Teru or his personal form for later. Yeah, I got info galore. I don't think it's going to matter though because he hasn't even used his ninjutsu yet. Sasuke chuckled at the hopelessness of the situation. You're telling me this guy's speciality isn't kenjutsu? Naruto glanced at Sasuke, incredulous. He had assumed that this guy was the kenjutsu master of the leaf or something. I didn't say that. Kenjutsu is only one of his specialties. Kenichi is just a 1 in a million talent that comes along once in a generation, just like my brother was. He's exceptional in almost every field. Sasuke reminisced about the good times for a moment, which proved to be dangerous as the leaf shinobi resumed his offensive. So what's he not perfect at? Naruto asked as his feet skidded across the dirt with each subsequent blow from their opponent. I don't suppose you have any high-level genjutsu at your disposal, do you? Sasuke asked rhetorically, parrying 2 sequential blows from Kenichi, only to be thrown off balance by a third. Sorry, I left my comprehensive genjutsu mastery handbook and GD robes back on Coruscant. Naruto joked back as he ducked under the wide sweep of Kenichi's blade. He managed to deflect the second sweep. Darn, you shouldn't be so forgetful, Uzumaki. Sasuke snapped back with a grin under his helmet. Don't you two know it's rude to talk about people behind their backs, especially in a language I can't understand? Their opponent had been eavesdropping to no avail, and hearing his name dropped a few times in their foreign conversation was far too irritating for the leaf swordsman. He lashed out in a fury, and Naruto readied himself for the barrage of attacks. He decided that now was the time to utilize a terror in full. Naruto leapt towards the sky and started flipping through the air, striking wildly at Kenichi who blocked every blow. Naruto turned the strain of their collisions into momentum to launch himself into the air again and again, striking with every descent. Naruto focused hard on his opponent, trying to sense some sort of weakness, but his mind blurred as he reached out with the force. "Damn you, you stupid fox!" Naruto cursed Kurama's intervention. He knew it wasn't really the tailed beast's fault. He was only doing what he was always trying to do, escape the seal. But his body being flooded by demonic chakra as a result of the seal weakening was the true source of his predicament. Naruto focused again on Kenichi as he landed. He had to prove to his opponent that he was far from exhausted, so he kept up his form IV offense. Naruto spun and jumped wildly, all the while Kenichi was dodging and parrying his blade. That was when Naruto discovered that concentrating so heavily on his opponent had revealed something he hadn't noticed before. It should have been obvious, even with his senses dulled, but the blonde hadn't taken the time to make the observation that Kenichi's presence, and the presence of all the shinobi nearby in the forest even, felt like a complete void in the force. Each shinobi was a dark spot in his mind's eye. All of them, except for Sasuke. Sasuke, by comparison, seemed only slightly more attuned than the average individual. Compared to the complete blackout that were the other shinobi, he was practically a lighthouse. Especially in this forest that was practically transpiring with force energy. Naruto also knew that chakra seemed to suppress midichlorians. This meant one of two things to Naruto. Either Sasuke was unique amongst the people of Ajnan, and that he was remarkably force-sensitive like Naruto, or it was the more obvious explanation that Sasuke wasn't using chakra. He was holding back for some reason. But why? "Hey Uchiha. What's going on with you?" Naruto had to know the reason, but Sasuke only sneered back at the blonde, seemingly offended. "What do you mean what's going on with me? Aren't you supposed to be some big shot GD?" Naruto rolled his eyes in response. "Stupid Uchiha and their stupid pride. Not that. I mean, why are you holding back? This guy is obviously stronger than you." Sasuke widened his eyes briefly, but Naruto couldn't see them behind his helmet. "I'm not holding back." Sasuke affirmed, or rather lied. "Not using chakra is kind of the definition of holding back." "You mean you could tell?" He was a little impressed, but ultimately unsurprised. "Damn GD and their psychic powers. I didn't notice until just now, but yeah, I can tell." Naruto smirked slightly as he danced around Kenichi blade with a graceful but unrefined Form 2 cadence. "Look, things with me and Konoha are complicated. Now's not the time. I can't use most of my jutsu with this helmet on, and if I use any lightning release I'll be outed instantly." Naruto's mouth gaped in response. He was completely baffled by the apparent lack of logic. "What does that have to do with not using chakra?" Naruto almost shouted. "The two Hyuga that were with the party can see chakra with their taijutsu. If I use it at all, they might be able to recognize me from my chakra alone." Sasuke explained, but Naruto was still unconvinced of the severity of the issue. "Why does that matter so much to you? Our window for being taken prisoner has probably expired. If we don't put some effort into this, he's gonna kill us. I don't think effort is gonna matter if Kenichi starts taking things seriously too. I don't think you understand how much he is holding back. You might be able to match him now, but when he turns up the heat it's game over." Sasuke said grimly. "You let me worry about that. Just start some chakra and start using that Sith lightning stuff like before." Sasuke had a look of confusion on behind his visor. Was he talking about the Chidori? "You know, I'm starting to get pretty pissed off by all your secret conversations." Kenichi, more than anything, hated being left out of the loop. Sheathing his blade, Kenichi's left hand went through a blinding fury of hand signs as he reached towards his tool pouch, pulling out half a dozen shuriken as he inhaled deeply. "Shit." Sasuke screamed mentally. "Kaiten, more shuriken no door, fire release, blazing shuriken dance," Kenichi roared, and with it a fireball emerged from his mouth, igniting the shuriken as he threw them at his foes. Sasuke deflected two with his vibroblade and dodged a third, while Naruto elected to dodge all three. "Naruto, watch out." Sasuke shouted, but Naruto was confused. He just dodged the shuriken. Then he sensed danger incoming. Reactly almost too late, Naruto spun around and spun his blade, cutting two flaming shuriken to pieces, but that didn't stop the two others from impacting his left arm and shoulder. Naruto grunted as he felt the stabbing pain. He reached to remove the shuriken, but they were suddenly tugged out of him by some invisible force, but Naruto then saw it was actually nearly invisible ninja wire wrapped around Kenichi's fingers. The onyx-haired shinobi flicked his fingers, and the two shuriken came close enough to be reignited with a quick puff of flame. He sent both these and in two fresh stars of molten metal after Sasuke, as he jumped towards Naruto with one blade drawn. "Kaiten. Tsubasa no more, fire release, blazing wings." Two small bursts of flame erupted from his closed fists. Naruto didn't notice it at first, but Kenichi had used the fire to rapidly heat up the air around him, giving him a brief moment of lift and a considerable burst of speed. Kenichi's free hand released the strings of the superheated shuriken, as he flashed through a series of hand signs. It soon began to glow with an orange light as he approached the blonde, who readied his blade for another ninjutsu. "Kaiten. Megara Taiho, fire release, cinder cannon." Kenichi lunged forward with his arm. Naruto, prepared to defend himself, swung towards his enemy's outstretched hand, only to be blown backwards by the force of the explosion emanating from Kenichi's palm. It wasn't much substance, but the shockwave was something else for such a small attack. Still, Naruto recovered fairly easily, but he wasn't prepared for yet another ninjutsu. Kaden. Kagasukusen, Fire Release, Scorch Ray. Kenichi didn't let up and launched another fire ninjutsu. Naruto couldn't possibly react to 3 ninjutsu, he had never seen one right after the other. As a stream of white hot fire flared from his hand, heading straight for Naruto's undefended right side. Before it could impact, however, Sasuke flew in and kicked Kenichi's arm away. Kenichi lost control of the technique, and it collided directly with Sasuke's helmet, searing some of the metal away. In the interest of self-preservation, Sasuke rushed to remove the melting helmet before it could burn him too much. He lucky, only suffering from a severely blistered cheek. Naruto expected another attack to come, but Kenichi just froze in place staring at Sasuke. His eyes glanced around to the other shinobi across the battlefield who didn't seem to notice. Finally, they settled on Naruto, who reeled from the intensity of his glare. So, you do work for Orochimaru. I'm not a fan of liars. You're definitely getting your face smelted now. Kenichi's fist glowed orange again as he readied another volley of flame. What are you talking about? I don't work for anyone. I'm out here on my own trying to find the Hokage. Kenichi rolled his eyes. How stupid did this blonde think he was? Then how do you explain this traitor being part of your entourage? Naruto's eyes followed Kenichi's sword over to Sasuke. He briefly glanced back at Kenichi, before doing a double take on the raven-haired bounty hunter, still clutching his singed cheek. Sasuke, you mean you? Everything made sense now. Sasuke's aversion to Ajin, his reluctance to be discovered, as well as his complete silence on the matter. Look, it's not what you think, GD. I left Orochimaru almost as soon as I joined him once I realized he was just after my Sharingan. It was one of my conditions that I not be put on the Konoha front, so I never fought with any Konoha shinobi while I was under him, only Katsuki's red cloaks. Seriously, you guys think you can just cut me out of every conversation with this stupid made-up language? It's not like I don't know what you're talking about. Still, I will say I'm a little surprised. I thought you were stronger than this, Uchiha. Kenichi sheathed his blade and went through the motions of performing hand signs. The distance between them kept Kenichi's unnecessary hand sign unseen by his opponent. Fire Release. Hamdan, Kaden. Flame bullets. Extending his arms, Kenichi curled his glowing fingers like claws. Finger-sized bullets of flame launched towards the two spacers. The weak attack was easily deflected by their blades, but it left them unprepared for the massive gust of wind that impacted them from behind, sending them scrambling through the air, trying to find footing on nothing. Kenichi leapt into the sky and unleashed a taijutsu combo on an unprepared Sasuke, launching him into the ground with a mighty crash. The raven-haired Uchiha was glad he was wearing armor. Naruto found himself assaulted by another torrent of wind that left shallow cuts on him this time. Reaching out with the force, Naruto kicked out, his foot painfully impacting against metal and being pushed away. Kenichi landed gracefully on a downed tree, smirking confidently after his brief victory against the treacherous Uchiha. But another person had landed next to him, a young woman with blonde hair with a large fan propped against a large boulder. As he got to his feet, Sasuke tensed, recognizing the new arrival immediately. I was beginning to wonder if you had gotten my message, Lady Kazukage. Kazukage. Now Naruto was extremely interested in their conversation. Sure did, Kenichi. Reinforcements are on the way. I went ahead, but the rest of the strike team will be here as soon as they regroup. The Suna blonde reported as Sasuke's eyes widened as he looked around for any incoming opponents, but breathed a sigh of relief that none were coming for at least another several minutes. Tamari, good to see you're up and kicking after I trounced you for backstabbing Konoha during the Chunin exams. The Uchiha turncoat said with a smirk. Shut it, Uchiha. Tamari growled, at least I didn't choose to turn against Konoha like you did. Orochimaru made that decision for us outside of our knowledge. You should know that better than anybody since you've been cozied up with him for the past decade. Tamari spoke with deep venom in her words. Orochimaru had deceived, double-crossed, and destroyed her village. Not to mention what he had done to her brother. She was probably the one person in the alliance who hated Orochimaru and the Sound Village more than anyone. I left Orochimaru behind after not even a year. I didn't need him to get stronger. I traveled far, found a new teacher. I'm free of him. Sasuke boasted proudly. I'm sure. How's the curse mark treating you, by the way? Tamari struck a bullseye on Sasuke's nerves with that one. It was the one thing left over tying him permanently to Orochimaru and Ajin as a whole. He tried countless avenues, but even modern galactic science was baffled in trying to cure it. That was the last straw for Sasuke. He charged towards the Kazukage in a mild rage, but he was careless and was blocked by Kenichi's glowing hand. Kaden, Hikeno Jutsu, Fire Release, Fire Fist Technique. Sasuke was again thankful he was wearing armor. The might have melted his bare hand, but the Uchiha was pissed now, and responded with a jutsu of his own. Kaiten, Rika no Jutsu, Fire Release, Dragon Flame Technique. Kenichi backed away to avoid being incinerated, but the flame was larger than his anticipated, and his flak jacket caught fire during the retreat. He quickly removed it, leaving him only in his blue undershirt and pants. It was an inopportune time though, as Sasuke was already on the move, his Sharingan activated at last. Kenichi tried to maintain his defenses with taijutsu, but Sasuke's added bulk gave him an advantage in force. Kenichi was thankful when the Uchiha was blown away again by Temari's giant fan. What's with that ridiculous getup, Uchiha? Afraid of a little Oe so you put on some bulky armor? The Kazekage taunted. Sasuke growled. Facing Kenichi and Temari alone was definitely a death sentence. Good work, Lady Kazekage. But if you don't mind, I'd like you to take care of that blonde over there. He's dangerous, and he seems to be their leader. Probably one of Orochimaru's new lieutenants, Kenichi stated, pointing towards Naruto. Temari nodded with a smirk as she jumped towards Naruto, her fan spread out beneath her as she glided towards him. She sent a cutting wind jutsu at Naruto, but he hit her packed and was prepared to dodge. He quickly took note of her movements and found himself disappointed. Was this really the Kazekage? She didn't seem all that strong. Definitely weaker than he expected, and she didn't hold a candle to Kenichi in terms of speed or power. Perhaps she had some kind of secret technique. He would have to be careful. Sounds fine, but what do you plan to do? Sasuke's a bit much for one person. I guess I'll just have to go wild as I deal with this traitor. Wisps of flame began billowing from Kenichi as he drew his blade once again. His muscles flexed as chakra swelled up inside him. Sasuke trembled when he realized what was happening. Not in excitement, but in slight fear. He knew this technique, and it was terrifying to experience even when he was on Kenichi's side. Now that he was on the opposite end of it, Kaiten, Rekanoken, Fire Release, Blazing Blade, the air began to heat up as Kenichi's arms burst into flame all the way up to his shoulder, incinerating what was left of his sleeves. His black blade began to make a loud screeching noise, as it reacted to the heat coursing through it. Suddenly, the noise stopped and the blade exploded into a torrent of flame, extending its length with a good 20 centimeters of pure fire. The flames around his arms dulled their roar in response to the sudden combustion on his sword. Nice to finally meet you in battle, Kenichi of the Burning Leaf. Sasuke addressed his opponent by his infamous moniker, with a sharp stare and a false grin. This facade was all he could do to preserve his pride. Internally, he knew what Kenichi was capable of when using his full power. He would definitely need someone to assist him, and fast. He could only hope the blonde GD would be able to defeat Temari quickly enough. He should be able to with little difficulty. I wish I could say the same for you, last of the Uchiha. Unfortunately, my respect for you vanished along with your betrayal. Kenichi returned the favor. The two shinobi jumped towards one another, their blades clashing with a sharp hiss, as the vibration cell and fire chakra contained within them tried to overpower one another. Naruto took a moment to observe his surroundings, now that he could recuperate his strength against this disappointment of the Kazekage. With that title he had expected her to at least be on Kenichi's level, if not stronger. Blitz had wisely chosen to make his way back to the group despite struggling against his opponent, who completely outclassed him in speed and power. To make matters worse, he was effectively fighting a 2-on-1 battle, thanks to his transforming beast. The passing spirals of claws and fangs had chipped away at his armor, eventually causing him to remove much of it, leaving only his gray bodysuit covering his upper body. Without the heavy metal plates to weigh him down, he sped up ever so slightly, enough that he was able to consistently dodge his opponent's attacks. He eventually lured Kiba into making a poor attack choice, and ended up landing a full power stun on him. Fang was still facing one of the Hyuga that Sasuke had pointed out, but the contest appeared close, or was it? The girl was cut along her arms and legs pretty badly, and it didn't look like she had managed to get a clean hit on him yet. It seemed like when the battle didn't involve lightsabers, Fang was a lot more capable in close combat than he had first thought. The others have also begun to fare better. King had subdued his opponents with ninja wire, and moved to back up Flash and Stoic against a big-chested blonde. Perhaps Naruto was worried over nothing. He should learn to trust his men to handle themselves more. Stoic dropped from above with his trench-style vibro knife ready, trying to surprise his enemy that was occupied tangoing with King. She had caught on almost immediately and his sneak attack failed miserably. In fact, it ended up backfiring as she kicked him viciously, shattering the transparent steel of his visor. He removed it and tried throwing it as an improvised projectile, but she cut through it with ease, before returning to defend against her primary opponent, the man that had defeated the rest of her team. You're a lot stronger than you look, lady. King's Vibroknivs collided with the blonde's Tanto, each strike leaving a stinging sensation up his arms. This woman was extremely skilled with that knife of hers. It didn't matter how much he tried, he just couldn't get a clean opening for Flash or Stoic to land a finished blow. She was probably stronger than even Venturous had been in their duel a little over a month ago. Recalling what little he had learned from Naruto, King spoke in the Ajnan language. Name is King. You? King said between breaths. He was curious to know just who he was facing. Despite his thick accent, his opponent seemed to understand. Samui. She answered plainly. Samui, you are powerful. King complimented as best he could. The blonde grinned slightly at that. You're pretty cool yourself, King. I'm quite impressed with those moves of yours in that heavy armor. It's too bad you're with Orochimaru. You would be helpful in our ranks. Samui responded, but King had lost her with that sentence. He had also lost sight of her quick movements too fast for even his highly trained eyes to see. She had closed in and King barely leaned out of the way of her tanto slashing through his helmet like butter. His visor display faded as the bisected power cell failed. With the protective headgear now useless, King removed it and chucked it into the ground. Samui was about to strike again, but she noticed the similarities between Stoic and King, or rather, the fact that they were totally identical aside from hairstyle, and the few extra scars that King had. Wait, hold on. Don't tell me the two of you are twins. She was a bit curious. Twins weren't unheard of, but they were still a rare enough occurrence to warrant a passing question. King caught her last word, and quickly corrected her. Twins? No. Clones. Samui's eyes widened slightly. Clones, there was no clone technique that let you wear different styled armor, and a cosmetic transformation in battle was not only pointless, but downright wasteful. Did that mean, were these products of Orochimaru's genetic experiments like Tenso? Holy shit. I totally called it. Evil super soldier clones created by Orochimaru being led by Sasuke Uchiha to destroy Konoha. Amoy called out from his position tied firmly to a tree, incredulous. Carrie reached over with her foot and kicked him in the shin. Shut up already, idiot. You didn't say anything about them being clones, and I was the one that said Uchiha was leading them. At least give me my half of the credit. Amoy simply slid his legs out of the way, so that Carrie had nothing to kick. She started screaming at him even louder, so Amoy reluctantly moved his legs back into striking range to protect his ears. Somewhere in the force, Storm cursed himself for being drawn out so far away from the others, as he was now having one hell of a time against the Paleid Hyuga. Despite his superiority in close combat over his brothers, his opponent proved to be one tough bastard, seldom letting any of Storm's attacks break through his rotating shield of energy. Despite his failed offensive though, Storm had proven extremely resilient to the strange palm thrusts and finger jabs Niji was dealing out. I can't believe my Ken isn't having any effect on him. I've hit him at least a couple dozen times. What kind of monster is he to be able to stay standing after that? Niji was utterly aghast at Storm's resilience. The Hyuga was not used to fighting an opponent for this long, and it was beginning to take its toll on his stamina. Niji noticed his opponent was attacking him head-on, and he readied his 8 trigrams defense. Pivoting along his heels, Niji spun as he expelled chakra from his Tenketsu to defend against Storm's incoming kick. Niji felt a powerful impact on his side and collapsed to the ground in pain. Storm's single kick had broken through his defenses. Looking up, he saw that he had completely shredded through his opponent's armor, but the metal leg concealed underneath was unscathed. Niji took solace in the fact that he had lost due to a lack of awareness, rather than his lack of skill. The metal leg swiped across the Hyuga's face, knocking him unconscious. Finding his bearings, Storm's scanners suddenly picked up 3 signatures moving rapidly through the trees. Willing to take a bet that they were headed towards Naruto and the others, Storm followed close behind. With the main battle, Fang had fought hard, trying to gain the upper hand, but this girl was simply not having it. The defeat of her comrades had pushed her to fight even harder, and his left arm was beginning to go numb from being poked with the force of 100 punches multiple times. Thankfully, it was only his left arm suffering this. His cybernetic right one was completely unaffected, a fact that seemed to catch his opponent off guard when he used it to sucker punch her when she got too close for comfort. That wasn't too hard, Fang lied as he stood over the unconscious brunette girl. He was exhausted. Boy, you okay? Flash questioned Fang, who huffed at his defeated opponent. I'm just peachy. Fang was gasping for air as he massaged his arm. Flash took note and began analyzing the battlefield. He didn't know about Storm off in the distance, but aside from him that left King is the only one of the clones that had yet to finish off his, well, Flash briefly lamented his inability to defeat his opponent, even with help from Stoic. King had to take over for them after subduing 2 foes already. Apart from the clones, the bounty hunter was having serious trouble against the man with combusting arms, and Naruto was seemingly treating the blonde fan lady with a certain degree of disdain. Thon, the Kamitachi no Jutsu, wind release, cyclone scythe technique. Tamari was somewhat sick of being treated like a joke, and summoned forth her most powerful wind jutsu. Having gotten distracted by the events around him, Naruto went into a brief panic as he dodged the pockets of wind trying to slice him to pieces. Once he regained his composure, he found dodging the attacks not exactly easy, but not overly difficult. Naruto raised his saber and moved in for a dismembering strike, but he suddenly sensed danger. Backing away, Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as a bolt of lightning struck exactly where he had intended to be just a few moments earlier. Looking around for the source, Naruto came up empty-handed. He sensed an incoming attack again and jumped out of the way, another bolt of lightning. Well, this certainly is a lively gathering. Wouldn't you agree, Asuma? A voice had drawn the attention of the entire battlefield to the tree branches above, where 3 figures stood. Definitely looks that way, Derry. These sound bastards are getting bolder and bolder every day. They look ready for combat all geared up in armor like that. They almost look like those samurai from the Land of Iron. A grisly-looking bearded man, presumably this Susumu, was sizing up the battlefield. His eyes locked on the dual knife user wearing red armor. He took a puff on the cigarette in his mouth then exhaled the smoke out of the other corner with a deep sigh. Things still seem pretty dull overall. But I'm surprised they managed to defeat the Hyuga boy. I always thought he was pretty strong. Another dark-skinned platinum blonde, Derry, made his appearance. Niji is a highly capable jonin. We probably should take this threat seriously. No time for fooling around, said the third figure. His masked face and gray hair was instantly recognizable to Sasuke, who was not looking forward to this unexpected reunion with his old sensei in the slightest. Hey, glad you finally made it, Asuma. Kenichi called out from his duel with Sasuke below. The graying grizzly bear smiled as he spit out his cigarette butt. Yo, Kenichi, I didn't know you were stationed out here, buddy. Take a look, I brought some reinforcements. Asuma pretended as if Kenichi were blind to the other two elite jonin standing beside him. The gray-haired scarecrow chose to jump down to the ground to better provide assistance for Kenichi. I can see that. Good to have you with us as usual, General Derry, General Hatake. But Don't Strike teams usually consist of 5 members. Where's your 5th? Derry and Asuma both glanced behind them, slightly curious. Yo, you fools. Why you acting cool when you know you're about to duel? As if on cue, a 4th figure, yet another dark-skinned platinum blonde leapt from the treetops and onto the grass below, his multitude of swords swaying with his movements. Naruto was beginning to wonder if that was the only hair color they allowed in Kumo. At least this one had a goatee and sunglasses to break up the monotony. The black frame of his shades shined in the light as his mouth twisted into a grin. He struck a dramatic pose that was baffling to Naruto, but the GD was still wary of the danger was sensing. Hope you're ready to battle up here in the beehive. Cause once I'm through with you, none will be alive. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.